Hello everyone, welcome and welcome back to the Product Marketing Festival in APAC. With product marketing experts from Singapore, Australia, China Mainland, Hong Kong, Malaysia, India, and many other regions. We'll be covering all product marketing aspects from sales enablement, go-to-market strategy, to customer onboarding, positioning, and messaging. We got them all. You are guaranteed to walk away with tons of new ideas and strategies to take your product to the next level. I would also like to take this chance to say a big thank you to all festival speakers. We cannot make this without you. Also, thanks for the support from iClick Interactive. Their presentation, Discover the Secret to Adapting Data-Driven Marketing in China, is scheduled at day 1 afternoon, 3:30 Singapore time. I highly recommend it if you have not signed up for it yet. Last but not the least, if you would like to interact with our speakers and other attendees, please join our group page link at the end. We look forward to the Q&A session and your feedback over there. Relax and enjoy the festival.
Thank you, nice to be here. Hopefully this is gonna be a really fun topic, kind of get everyone out of their post-lunch haze. So I'm here to present around personas. So just first of all, to ask the audience, how many people at your company today have personas? Raise your hand. Okay, how many people are happy with the personas that they have at their company today? Okay, so maybe noticeably less people. And I think that that is true of all of us. You know, I think that personas are the kind of thing that are never done, and we should always be iterating and kind of deepening our understanding of the customer because it's so core to what we do. So today we're going to talk about why personas are important, and then I'm going to take you through some really practical steps on persona development. And again, even if you do have personas already in place, I think these steps are really valuable to layer on to whatever personas that you have existing. And then I'm going to end it on some inspiration with some cool ways that companies have visualized their personas, which is such an important part of persona development. Okay, so first a little bit about me. I'm originally from Atlanta, Georgia, went to Emory University, moved to Austin in 2001. So I've been here for quite a while and taken quite the tour of growth stage startups in my career here in Austin, most of which has been in product marketing. I also went to McCombs in their MBA program, so got my UT credentials there. After kind of my growth stage startup experience, I ended up at IBM about a year ago. So pretty big change for me. But I am really excited about the new opportunities that I'm having at IBM. I'm growing in very new and different ways, and I'm able to bring some of the experience I have from kind of the smaller startup world. And one of the areas where I have seen a noticeable gap is the interactions with customers, with salespeople, with support, all those great ways that as product marketers, we get that deep understanding of customers. And at a big company like IBM, that makes sense because they can't have 300,000 employees running around talking to customers all day, right? It just would create complete chaos. So I think that it goes to show why personas are even more important as a tool when you don't have sales right next to you, when you don't have, a customer that you could call up on a whim. So this is a visual that I like to use when talking about personas and why they are so important. Messaging gets a lot of the glory. It pretty much gets all the glory, right? When you see a great ad campaign put together, when you see a great content piece, you look at it and you're like, wow, this is awesome. Oh, it had such great ROI. It produced these results and everything. I guarantee you that every good marketing piece has a solid foundation of deep understanding of customers. So it's kind of that silent base that really informs all good product marketing. So personas are the foundation. It really comes down to a few basic things that seem very basic, and it will take constant iteration and perfection to accomplish this. Understanding your customer, understanding what problems they have, how does your product help them solve the problems, and this is the secret weapon to help you nail your positioning. So if you cannot answer all of these questions with confidence, if your teams cannot answer these questions, if your sales teams can't answer the questions, then there are going to be problems. So not only are we as product marketing in charge of kind of crafting this, we also have to take the huge step of adoption and making sure that everyone is enabled and consistently saying the same message. So the goal, product market fit. You hear a lot about this in the startup world because startups are always, looking for their market fit, right? And this is kind of put up, as a golden standard, the product market fit. And I don't know how many people in here have had experience at a company where you really have felt that you have hit a product market fit. Has anyone felt what that feels like? Okay, you know it when you feel it. I had an experience at a startup when we were in that, and it is a stride, it's a great feeling, and it got me addicted to startups. So, it's wonderful. When it's not happening, it feels like pushing a boulder up a hill. So, your customers aren't quite getting value out of the product, word of mouth isn't spreading, usage isn't growing that fast, press reviews are kind of blah. So if you are in that in any way right now, go back and look at your personas because chances are those need to be revisited. So the best personas are a mix of quant and qual. A lot of times we have access to a lot of data. As product marketers, we're usually data people. We could pour through data. I love some Gartner, Forrester reports and looking at charts and everything like that. Sometimes, especially around personas, this is kind of the end of our analysis, right? Our customer is this % likely, and on the survey they ranked this as their number one priority, so we should go here, and we are kind of done with the job. At IBM, we have a great resource of a basically R&D team. A research team that prepares analyst reports and does, their own first-party research and everything like that. Amazing tool, but we can't just take what they give us and then pass it over, We have to kind of take another level of qualitative on top of that. So the way to do this is through interviews. This is easier at some companies than it is at others, but I can't de-emphasize the importance of interviewing. If you are at a company that is enterprise, that you can't necessarily call up the CTO of JP Morgan Bank and talk to them on the phone, there are some other things that you can do. Number one, you could talk to people in your network that have similar titles. Talk to business partners, talk to sales, talk to customer support, and really advocate for getting some face time with customers, whether that's at an event or a cab or customer support event. Those are really invaluable to understand your customers. So this was kind of my secret weapon, and I promise you I do not have stock in Crystal, but I probably should because I talk about them a lot and give them a lot of props. There's a tool out there called Crystal, formerly known as Crystal Knows, and it is this really cool AI personality research tool. And it's a plugin that you download and that you could put on LinkedIn. And when you go to someone's profile on LinkedIn, you click the little Crystal button and it does some crazy AI, analysis and tells you what their personality is. And there are, I don't know, maybe like 10 different personality types. Really fascinating stuff and really scary stuff if you want to look up yourself and see what it says. So go ahead and try that. But how we used Crystal at IBM is that we took a list of titles that were a fit with our customer base. And I had my team go and research people on LinkedIn that had that title. So, who is the Global Chief Technology Officer at JP Morgan? Andrew Lang. Will I ever get to talk to Andrew Lang on the phone? Probably not, right? But I can look up him and, 30 or 40 people like him on LinkedIn and look at their Crystal profile. And if you can imagine, a lot of CTOs, CIOs fall into a very similar personality profile, just as a lot of product marketers fall into a similar product marketing like personality profile. So you start to see similarities in the personalities. And the one thing I do like about Crystal, if you look at this screenshot at the bottom, it shows you some emotional indicators, which is a lot of times what is missing from personas. Personas are different than segmentation, right? Segmentation is what your role is, what your gender is, how old you are. What a lot of times is not covered is what motivates you, what are your strengths, what are your communication ways that you prefer to be communicated with. So those are very important nuances to kind of take that persona development to the next level. So interview questions. Not everyone is comfortable interviewing, which I get. It can be really overwhelming if you haven't done it a while. I personally love interviewing customers. I think it is super gratifying and rewarding, and it's actually not as hard as you may think it is. The reason why it's not hard is because in interviews, you aren't really supposed to talk a lot anyway. So if you ask a few good open-ended questions, I promise you, the customer or the business partner or the salesperson is gonna talk your ear off. So if you do line up a customer interview, just start it out open-ended. Say, hi, I'm in product marketing. I'm building some, initiatives, strategic initiatives for this year. Just wanted to hear what's top of mind with you this year. What are some initiatives that you're thinking about? What are some of your biggest challenges for the year? And just shut up. And they'll talk, right? So you'll hear some really interesting information. Anyone familiar with jobs to be done? If you're not, I would recommend looking into jobs to be done. It's kind of an agile methodology that essentially just means, get to the root causes, don't look at the symptoms. And a lot of the times at really kind of top level interview and needs analyses, we talk about the top level of symptoms, and we don't really get down to the root causes. Don't lead the witness. This is an important one and one that is really hard not to do. We're coming with our agenda, and the customer may not want to talk about IBM. They may not want to talk about your company or your product, and that is okay. It's actually better because you really want to hear about, holistically, what their point of view is like. I always like to ask questions that include talking about emotions. What frustrates you the most? What do you love the most about? What stresses you out? A good example I like to give with this is if you've ever purchased a car, right? So if you purchased a car and I asked you, what are the top 3 reasons you purchased the car that you did? It's energy efficient and the price was very economical. You're gonna list some really rational, substantiated reasons why you bought that car. You will not tell me that you bought that car because you like the color of it or because it has like a cool sport mode that makes like a sound when you're going fast or whatever. But a lot of times those are really the features that make people buy. So as product marketers, sometimes we really get focused in on the features of the product and we forget about the payment terms are really important. The customer service experience, how much they liked talking to the salesperson, the delivery of the product, right? So there's a lot of reasons outside of just basic functionality that sometimes we overlook and that we could highlight more. Other good questions, if you could change one thing, ... I also like the question of tell me about your last purchase. Again, when you talk about something in the theoretical, people are gonna go to a very logical place, but if you actually ground them in the reality of what their last purchase experience was, they're gonna give a truer answer. And then the last tip is to record your interviews for a couple reasons. Number one, you don't want to be preoccupied with taking notes and missing something. And then the second is that you could then record those interviews and take them through some kind of like language analysis that I'll talk about here. But don't forget to ask permission when you record someone or they'll get creeped out. So I did this recently with some strategic planning for 2020 around moving to the cloud. Got some really great quotes that I was able to pull out of my interviews. And I don't think that there was anything that customers said in these interviews that was really groundbreaking, but what I really found fascinating was the way that they said it. So the words that they chose to use, the way that they chose to talk about this. And as a big corporation that tends to use corporate speak, it is so important for me to hear the word choice. So one of the other things that we did was we took the interviews that we had recorded by permission of the interviewees, and ran it through a tool called otter.ai. And this tool kind of like automatically transcribes the interview audio. So it's a really easy, efficient way. And then we ran those interviews through a word counter tool. So if you just Google word cloud generator or something like that, and you could actually see what words your interviewees used a lot. We also had a virtual panel that we had a transcript from that we ran this through as well. So you could see on the left words in green that customers used a lot, and then the yellow of words that customers use somewhat frequently, and then red, which was mostly words that at IBM we use a lot in our marketing. And guess what? Our customers do not talk about latency and agility and data residency, right? So they talk about those concepts, but they just use different words to describe it. So it's really important to take that lens on what we're doing in our messaging, in our creative, to make sure that we're speaking in the same language. So there's a lot of persona templates out there. This is one that I really like. It kind of gives everything nicely on one page, and it covers both kind of the demographic, logical information, as well as some of the squishier information like motivations and personality. So if you recognize this guy, he's actually a CTO in town who I interviewed. So you could tell Bobby that his picture is up on a wall if you know him. But this is the one example of the personas that we developed for the IT buyer. Anyone here market to IT leaders, IT decision makers? Okay, well, good luck, because they are really hard people. They are tough cookies. They are hard to market to. They're incredibly intelligent. They're very savvy. They want you to get to the point. They are very challenging, right? So the straight shooter is a great example of that. He's a wonderful leader. He's persistent. He's vigorous. He's data-driven. He's a great team leader. Some of the things that he's energized by: speed, efficiency, producing results, This is the language that he uses when he thinks about his own success. So we need to align our product and offering to how he helps achieve some of those objectives with himself. What is he drained by? Expressive displays of emotion, inefficiencies, unclear goals, long conversations, right? So these are all really important as we kind of develop our touch points with this persona over the buying journey. And we also put some of the quotes that we had derived from our interviews here to kind of really drive home what their motivations were. So for the straight shooter, it was this, an ideal day for me when there's no fires and everything goes to plan. So how do we develop a positioning and messaging that helps show the straight shooter how he can achieve that? So this is the fun part about visualizing personas. All the work that goes into personas is only half the battle, and we have to then communicate it. And especially being at a company like IBM, where we literally have hundreds, thousands of stakeholders that need to be armed with this information, being able to present it in a good way that's memorable, that's adoptable, is so important. So I picked a few of companies that I admire and how they kind of do their personas. This is a good example of kind of a standard persona, a little bit blah, and I picked it because it's a marketing persona. So we are all marketers here, and we can read this and be like, yeah, kind of, it's kind of right, but it's a little bit generic, right? So too many marketing channels, looking for ROI, they're looking for leads generated. Like, this is all kind of just like very whitewashed. It's not wrong, but it's not really speaking to me, right? So I would call this like a B+ persona. Because we all know that as marketers, there's a lot of different types of marketers. And when we talk about IT buyers, sometimes we tend to generalize around IT buyers as well, whereas in reality, they can be very different. Okay, so some good ones. I love the way that they're visualizing this. So this is MailChimp. A lot of these examples are B2C companies, which isn't really fair because B2C, I think, has an easier time developing personas than B2B. But I like to look at B2C companies for inspiration. So not only does this really summarize in a very digestible way who these personas are, but you could see this on a poster in a marketing huddle, with sales. So I love this. Spotify does an awesome job with their personas. The other cool thing is these companies actually publish their personas, like in a blog post describing how they develop them, who they are, so they make them really kind of available and transparent. Spotify, made these cool little cutouts that they put around the office. I also thought that this was an important point because we all want to be equitable and make sure that our marketing is diverse in this day and age. And we want to make sure to emphasize that our personas are relatable, but they're not one-to-one matches with real people, right? For example, it would be very easy for us to personify, have all of our personas for an IT leader be a middle-aged white guy. Yes, there are some middle-aged white guys who are IT leaders, but there are actually a very diverse population of IT leaders out there, and we need to make sure to do our part to make sure that that's reflected as well. So fine balance between stereotypes and personas. So just to throw that out there. This is kind of a cool example. I don't know if it relates to anything to do with, a B2B buyer, but I loved the exercise of thinking about, what is in your persona's purse or what's in your persona's backpack? What are they carrying around with them? What do they care about? What are the things? So, when you're working with your teams, don't be afraid to kind of think outside the box in these creative exercises that may spur some, new ideas about how to market to your persona. So just to wrap up, getting started is the hardest part. This is one of those important, but it's never urgent things to do. So it's important to have the discipline to set aside time for yourself for this. It's a never-ending journey. It is the key to being an amazing product marketer. It's something I'm very passionate about and absolutely believe it is the foundation of great marketing. You can leverage tools like I talked about, Otter AI, Crystal, LinkedIn, and then don't forget about the final step of how you're visualizing and socializing to really drive the adoption around those personas within your organization. That's all I had for today. Thank you.
I think it's on. Yes. Okay, so I'm going to ask the question that I think a ton of people probably already have, which is you seem to be a wealth of information on tools that we can use. Do you have other suggestions or other tools that you didn't talk about today?
Around personas specifically?
Around anything product marketing. I just have a feeling you have a lot of tools that are probably really good that we should use.
I am kind of an SEO nerd. And I really like a tool called Ahrefs. It's like the worst name ever. Well, sorry if anyone's from Ahrefs here, but I think that they could do better on their name. But it's the best SEO tool that I've used, and I think that for market research, SEO is so important to pull in like what people are really typing into that Google bar, so it could be a really good source of information.
Hi. For that straight shooter slide, I was curious how you got all that information and distilled it into everything that was on that slide.
For which slide?
Where you talked about interviewing that local CIO, I believe.
Yes.
And then determined that he was a straight shooter and then had all that information. How did you actually come up with all of that?
So that's a good question. When you start interviewing, it actually doesn't take as many interviews as you would think to start hearing the same answers. So I probably did about 20 or so interviews. And when you know that you're kind of like in a good place and you could move on is when you can start a conversation with someone and you're like, oh, yep, they're this kind of person. So that was just one of the personas that we had identified. Another one was, it was called like the innovator or something like that. They tend to be a lot more aspirational. love what challenges them and motivates them, is solving problems in really creative ways. So when you start to kind of have these hypotheses about what the personas are, and then you get on the phone with someone, and within a few minutes, you're like, oh yeah, they're totally this kind of person. Then you know you have something. So from there, we kind of refined our hypotheses around what those main personas were and developed those sheets around them.
Kind of cut in line. There were other questions.
Oh, sorry about that. Great presentation, thank you. So how deep do you go in the persona in terms of the influencer and buyer? And then let's say, because the person that signs the check usually is the high-level executive. Do you go to which level? I mean, because let's say in IT, VP of applications, or you go to the next level, or you go one level down?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think it really depends. It's a balance between bandwidth and what is actually going to be used. So, for us, we decided that we would rather get an A at a very few amount of focused personas than go really broad. And what you also have to think about is not only from a research perspective, what you have the bandwidth to do, but what your team that's actually creating the assets and creating the nurtures have the bandwidth to do. So, there's a wide breadth of possibility and, different personas that you could go down, but I'd really maybe pick the top 2 or 3 that are going to get you through that 80% of your customer base.
So once you've developed your personas, how often do you recommend iterating to continue to refresh them?
That's a good question as well. I would love for this to be kind of like an ongoing effort. I think in reality, it is probably like a yearly exercise. It's a great exercise to do as part of your next year planning cycle, to kind of refine them and tie your strategy back to them. See if there have been any changes, especially if you're in markets that are fast changing, which a lot of us are. It is an exercise that you should go back to frequently.
All right, we have time for one more question. Oh, one down there. All right, one of you stand up and just scream your question so we can keep it moving. Why don't you go? Yeah.
My question is around all this great work that you're doing. How do you drive adoption? What's the number one thing you do?
Yeah, adoption is going to be a challenge, right? So I think the best thing that you can do is not be afraid of self-promoting. I think being able to share this information with different stakeholders, and even in a company the size of IBM, it's amazing kind of the ripples that something that really sticks will make. So I've had people come to me who I didn't even know, who was forwarded from a friend and and they're coming. So I think if you really focus on creating something that is valuable in a way that's presented in a memorable way, and then you do that roadshow with internal influencers, then those people can be advocates to share that message. And it's always, again, going to be something that you continually have to be beating the drum.
Thank you. That was really great.
Yeah, thanks.